Hey, welcome back to Taste for Adventure. Today we've got a mouthful about Marzen Mouthfeel.
That's right. Yeah, and it is a mouthful.
Yeah, saying that was a mouthful.
Yeah. Try saying that 3 times fast.
I could barely. I'm actually surprised I said it the first time without needing to do multiple takes.
Yeah.
So we've got a creamy and smooth mouthfeel, but traditionally Marzens aren't really sweet, right?
That's right.
How is this? How is this?
Yeah, so one of the best things about a really well-crafted Marzen is that it is very malty, but it finishes crisp and dry. It's well carbonated and has a creamy medium body, but not quite as thick as you might expect from the rich, bready flavors. That's part of what makes it so easy to drink by the liter at festivals. It's thirst-quenching, perfectly balanced, and makes you want to keep taking sip after sip. So, yeah, how do you get a beer that boasts rich malty flavors without being too heavy in body or sweet in taste? It comes down to 2 things, ingredients and technique. It can be tempting to make a standard base beer, add a bit of medium caramel malts to get the color you're looking for, mash low and pitch a healthy yeast, but that won't get you a true Marzen. At best, you'd have a generic fall ale. Unfortunately, too many U.S. breweries take that approach. Ingredient-wise, it's best to source imported German malts. Munich malts come in a range of colors and they have a very bready flavor. They don't add sweetness the way caramel and crystal malts do. The best Marzens are made up of purely German base malt. You'll want to avoid adjuncts like sugar, wheat, oats, and lactose. No milkshake Marzens. As for technique, a long boil time can deepen the malt flavors. I'd go for at least a 90-minute boil in any Marzen with a good rolling boil to bring out all those rich flavors. Traditionally, Marzens were mashed by decoction mashing. Decoction mashing is a 2-step mash where you mash the grains at a lower temperature for a short time first, then pull off some of the wort, boil it to get it hot and enrich the flavors, then put it back into the mash. This will raise the overall mash temperature to your second step around 152 degrees, where the mash will rest for the remainder of the time. Decoction mashes can be time-consuming, but really do help enrich the malt flavors and can result in some really rich amber colors as well. If you're brewing a Marzen at home and don't want to take on a decoction, I'd recommend boiling for even longer, up to 2 hours. Just don't forget boil-off evaporation and adjust your mash water and pre-boil wort volume accordingly. You'll evaporate more water while you just keep concentrating and enriching those malt flavors via the Maillard reaction, which is the natural caramelization of foods through heat. So, when you use good German base malts and don't take shortcuts with adjuncts or sweet crystal malts, you either decoct mash or boil a really long time. The end result is a beer that's malty but isn't sweet or heavy. You get an impression of a fuller mouthfeel, but still have a beer that finishes dry and invites you back for more. Now, that's a mouthful about Marzen mouthfeel. I worked up a thirst talking about that. Let's try some Marzens and taste how they stack up. And we can look for good medium body and dry finish.
I'm in. Sounds good to me.
All right, what's our lineup look like today?
We've got Hacker-Pschorr. We've got Yuengling Oktoberfest.
Okay.
And we're going to finish it off with Great Lakes Oktoberfest.
BJCP writes its guidelines, it has standards to which all other beers should be judged,
okay.
Right? So like the ideal of that beer. And at the end of the guidelines, they list some commercial examples that should really exemplify what exactly that style is, okay. And maybe even some beers that they used when writing the guidelines. And Hacker-Pschorr is one example of that for the Marzen category. So Really, if you can find Hacker-Pschorr and want to kind of read through the guidelines, this is a great beer to calibrate and get a perfect baseline, because as you read through the BJCP guidelines, it should basically be describing what this beer tastes like.
Got it.
So yeah, this is kind of one of those beers that you can't really even improve upon it, because this is how, the guidelines were written to describe basically this beer. So it's a great one to have first, and then it's a good bar to which all other beers should be measured.
That's lofty praise.
Yeah.
That is good. It's quite good.
Well, when you smell it, they describe Marzens as as toasty, fresh bread crust, and you get that in spades on this.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty much immediate. It comes through in the flavor too, comes in the taste.
What I like about the flavor, and indicative of some of the best Marzens, is that it's so malty in the aroma, but then you drink it, and it's not that heavy of a beer. It's still all malt, but it's crisp. Yeah. It's refreshing.
Crisp. This is actually really nicely carbonated.
Yeah. And it's not too heavy. It's really not sweet at all.
No, I can't perceive really any sweetness.
And the Germans have been brewing for a very long time. They know what they're doing in brewing, and that's no accident. When you have a beer that's not heavy, that's not sweet, right. It's thirst quenching. Yeah. But then at the same time, it dries your mouth out, and it invites you. It invites you to take more sips, and you just want to keep on drinking it.
Yeah.
It also goes really, really well with food. It's a good kind of palate cleanser, moving from one type of food to the next.
Okay.
And it helps wash some big, bold flavors that you might have in the fall season. Big German food flavors down really well.
Yeah, you could definitely eat with this with some sauerkraut. Big pretzel, big sausage.
Yep. So, as far as hoppiness goes, I do get just a touch of that noble hop, and it's really not a whole lot of bitterness. No. I think the beer's balanced not really between the hops and the malt, but by the malt being so well attenuated, so dry.
Yeah.
Because they didn't add any caramel malts to this. It's just a very clean base malt.
Yeah.
And a careful mash pattern to make sure that the yeast would chew every last bit of sugars in here possible.
Yeah.
And just a little bit of hops to balance. Mm-hmm. The hops that are in here, though, are kind of a little bit hay-like, a little bit herbal, and a little bit floral. So right there in the classic German noble hop.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they use classic, German noble hops in this.
I mean, this is an import beer.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing you hope for. So, yeah. No, I mean, when people call beer liquid bread, I think this is what they're talking about.
Oh, yeah. So, and the aftertaste, it really does want you to.
Yeah.
It's designed to make you want to keep drinking.
It's a little bit drying. Just enough to make you want to take it. It's like, I haven't drank a beer. I haven't had a sip in a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
Let's see. It's 5.8.
So I don't even want to really put notes on this or score it. I think it just it stands to show that this is kind of the pinnacle of what Marzen should be. So I would just really recommend to try to pick up a bottle of the Hacker-Pschorr Marzen and sip through it while you read the guidelines, and that'll kind of help to key you in on what the guidelines are exactly talking about.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, unfortunately for Yuengling, I think we've started setting the bar very, very high.
Well, you had said this is a good way. This is a good baseline to start. So we'll see. We'll see. How above or below Yuengling will be. But it could surprise us.
It could. So I'm eager to try it, especially now that we've had kind of the prime example of a Marzen, and see how other beers measure up to that.
Yeah. Let's try the Yuengling now.
All right.
So to start off, we've got a very deep amber color.
Yeah.
Really good clarity.
Super, super clear. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Nice kind of off-white head. It does dissipate rather quickly.
Yeah.
But nice color and initial size on that head.
There's that characteristic breadiness we're getting.
It is a little bit even more classic than I thought it might be.
Yep.
But yeah, this is like
looking
kind
good.
of
It's looking good.
yeah, pretty fresh, kind of white bread type aroma. And no real hops and no like appley esters at all to speak of.
No. I feel like there may be a little bit. I don't want to say bitterness. It's not like a hop bitterness, but there's a little bit something there. But yeah, very, very bready.
Very bready. I think you're getting that as like the hop flavor. There is more hop in this for sure than in the Hacker-Pschorr.
Compared to the Hacker-Pschorr, absolutely.
But there's also a little bit more malt sweetness in there as well.
Yes.
So I feel like it's almost like subtraction by addition. There is more sweetness, and then it's balanced by more hoppiness.
Yeah.
But it comes across it's actually still very well balanced.
Right.
But by having more sweetness and more hops, that makes it a little bit less true to style than than the Hacker-Pschorr, which is
which is the
definition of the style, but
easy to be out of the style if you aren't the epitome of it.
Right. But actually, I have to give it to them though. If the sweetness is going to be up a little bit, I'm glad that they increased the hop presence to balance it out.
Balance it out.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit of like a caramely sweetness. It's not intense, and it is well balanced, but it's definitely there, especially right after having the German example.
That's It's kind of hard when you're fighting that uphill battle of, being the scrappy challenger to the old vet. This has good carbonation too, I think.
It has good carbonation. I feel like it's a little bit lighter bodied than the Hacker-Pschorr, oddly enough.
Would you call that thin? Is that
it could be thick. I think for a Marzen it's thin. I would probably categorize this more as like medium thin or medium light bodied.
Okay.
Probably a touch under I don't know, how would you say it? Like a touch lower than would be called for by the style.
Yeah. Still decently creamy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Actually, it's really hard to knock it. I think it's still probably right in line with kind of how it should be for the style.
Sure.
Mouthfeel wise. Yeah, actually, it's kind of hard to find a flaw with it.
Yeah. Got a couple of aspects a little bit up there, but not a bad beer.
It really
pretty
really
true to
isn't.
style.
I'm a little surprised that a brewery so large as Yuengling is putting out a pretty true to style Marzen.
Yeah. Well, as they say, it's America's oldest brewery.
That is what they say.
At least what the bottle says.
That is it. Yeah.
But so hopefully they would know a little bit something now.
Yeah, well, I think when you have a brewery that's so well recognized, like a Sam Adams Oktoberfest or somewhere like that, you almost then start catering to the mass market. Right. Where and I think maybe that was a preconception I might have had with this one. As
could be.
It's going to be a generic, amber malty fall
beer. You think mass produced. You think Yuengling. You think bigger scale production.
Yeah. I still think it is not going to match up to like the German import. It doesn't have that like depth of really fresh, rich breadiness. But all the elements are there. It has all of those pieces. It's very well balanced. Mm-hmm. It is more malt forward, and the mouthfeel and the color is about right. So yeah.
Well, yeah. If the Hacker-Pschorr is a 50, this is maybe a 40, 45. It's good. It's a good beer.
45, I think, is pretty generous.
Yeah, very generous.
Yeah, 40. Basically, once you hit 45, you're thinking like world class beer.
Okay. Yeah.
So
maybe 30 or 35 rather,
I
think 35, 40.
I think 35, 40 in that range would be appropriate for this one. If this was in a homebrew competition, I could easily see it taking best in flight.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yeah. If I brewed this beer as a homebrewer, I would be very proud of myself. Yeah. Still nowhere near the classic German example, of course. Because I think it's easy to make. I don't want to say easy, but it's relatively easy to make a 30-point beer.
Yeah.
It's really hard to make a 40-point beer, and it's next to impossible to make a 50-point beer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a scale where it is not, it's not linear. Every point higher in judging is harder and harder to achieve.
Right. Well, I've heard it's pretty easy to make a good beer. It's very difficult to make an excellent beer.
Yeah, and that's why in judging competitions, so many beers, score in kind of the 30 range.
Sure.
And
it's very good.
It's very good, and it's really, really hard to break through that like 40 wall, because that's just like where you're getting into just superb beers.
Right.
And I think this is close to that. I would probably put it at in upper 30s.
Yeah. No, it's a good beer. It's a good offering from America's oldest brewery. Anyway.
You're really stuck.
I'm really stuck. That's crazy to me that it's I had never heard of Yuengling until I had visited upstate New York back in 2014.
Well, we need to get some Yuengling and then go to like a brewery opening, so then we can have America's oldest brewery at America's newest
brewery. That's perfect.
Yes.
All right, if you're opening a new brewery anytime soon, let us know.
Yeah, we'll come by with some Yuengling.
We serve beer here, right? Oh, we got it.
Yeah, we're good.
BYOB, right? We got it. Don't worry about it. We're on to Great Lakes Brewing, their Oktoberfest offering. So first off, this is, I think, the lightest of the flight. Am I right?
Yeah, it's the lightest. I still think it falls within a Marzen category. And oh my goodness, is it clear?
Yeah, really. Now Marzen's, that's a lager, correct?
That's right.
Now is the clarity, does that have anything to do with the lagering?
That's a great question. It's so much easier to have a very clear lager, because one of the ways to clarify a beer is by cold crashing it and chilling it. And that is actually the lagering phase of brewing a lager, is by cold crashing and chilling it for a long time, typically about 6 weeks. So when you do that and you do that well, you should have a crystal clear beer like this. Now, typically when your beer is this clear, we're not even getting any chill haze.
No.
So
not at all. Yeah.
That might indicate like a step mash as well. So if a beer had like just a single mash, you might still get a little bit of haze when it's cold that fades out when it gets warmer, which is called a chill haze.
Okay.
But a beer like this, it's just brilliant and clear from the moment you pour it.
Yeah.
So it was probably a good step mash. It might have even been traditionally decock mashed.
Could be.
So yeah. I'm getting like a spicy hop to it, like a little bit of like a peppery, spicy thing.
Yep, I feel that. Yep.
Yeah, and that definitely comes from the hops. Yep. So, Saaz typically is the noble hop that is gonna give you more of that like spicy,
kind of spicy
flavor,
peppery. Okay.
As opposed to some of the, there's only a few noble hops, but Saaz is the one. It's a Czech hop, considered a noble hop. and it's going to have that like spicy note to it.
Okay.
So I'd be willing to bet that there is Saaz in this.
Hop.
And not just in bittering, but a little bit on the flavor addition as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, this one's the kind of the farthest out of the flight that we've done so far, in terms of taste. It's got that little bit of a spice bitterness, kind of. Just like
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's from the hop addition, maybe the hop selection, but also kind of when they added it in.
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
So a lot of the other ones, if we've noted hop quality, usually it's been on more like that herbal or floral, which is more like the German side of like noble hops. Saaz is Czech, and that noble hop is noted for it shares a lot of characteristics with the other noble hops, but it also is it's known for its sort of spicy quality.
Yeah, that's wild. Even in the mouthfeel, I'm kind of like picking little bits of it up, a little bit of a taste.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
Definitely getting that malt characteristic. I think what's standing out to us, because we've had so many different Marzens in this series, we're getting used to kind of a hop profile taking a back seat, and the hop profile is kind of been very similar. I think in this one, the hop flavor is a little bit more even with the malt flavor.
Yes.
And also, it's a different type of hop flavor than we've been getting from most Marzens.
Well, yeah, for sure. And what do you, I guess particularly for the American beers, do you think that's just a result of hop availability? How do you think these big companies build their beers like this, especially in hop selection?
I think some of it's choice. There's definitely, some of the larger breweries have to kind of really plan with distributors several years out. Have big contracts, especially a brewery as big as Great Lakes services most of the Midwest, if not further out as well. They're not a small operation, so I'm sure they have some major hop contracts. Yeah. But part of it also, it's not just what is available and what is affordable. Okay. It can be personal choice as well. Saaz is a noble hop, and they could be looking to do something a little bit different, and that's okay.
No, for sure. And I mean, out of the whole Marzen series, I think this is the one with the spiciest kind of a taste.
Absolutely.
As far as I can remember, yeah.
Yeah, and and it might not just be Saaz. They could even maybe have found another like hop hybrid or hop blend that it includes some other hops that are providing that spiciness to it. Yeah. It's a great, really unique characteristic.
Yeah, and out of left field, yeah.
I think what's really nice when like an American craft brewery will brew a beer, it's nice that it stays really true to style, but then puts its own little spin on it. And I feel like that's what Great Lakes is doing with this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, once, we've talked about in other episodes, you are, if you're judging this, you're having so many beers of the same style over and over and flight, just constantly. It's at a certain point you need to decide, do I really want to be true to form, or do I want to put a little bit of spin on it?
Yeah, what stands out a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, this is very interesting offering.
Yeah, and when you can stand out but still be within the style guidelines, I think that's when you really have something. And I feel like that's what Great Lakes is doing.
I think so. And I mean, this is a 20 IBU beer. This is not a bitter beer, but it's definitely got that interesting, that sort of, what would you call, where would you place that in the boil?
That's a good question. Yeah. So definitely late edition. 15 minutes or less in the boil is going to give you flavor and aroma contributions. Mm-hmm. So I feel like more so than most Marzens, most recipes would call for, they would have had to have added some like mid-boil, late-boil hops to achieve this characteristic.
Absolutely.
Oh. But it works well.
It works.
Yeah. And this is all speculative. I haven't seen a clone recipe for this. I haven't talked to the brewer.
You haven't.
Maybe the brewer's watching the podcast or the YouTube channel and saying, that's not what I did at all. These guys are idiots. But as a judge, these are the types of things that go through our minds, trying to pick apart the beer
not just for the flaws, but for the things that are done really well too. So, my best guess is that there are some, 15-minute, 10-minute additions to this of a hop variety that's very spicy.
Yeah, and if you did brew this beer, comment down below.
Yeah.
We would love to talk to you.
Come on out to the bar, come on out to Taste for Adventure, and tell us how close we were or how wrong we are.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of our flight.
That was a mouthful.
It sure was. It was at least 3 mouthfuls.
Yeah.
Boy, it's really been a pleasure drinking these 3 beers.
Yeah, I'm learning. I'm learning a lot about all of these There's so much to learn about just tasting in general, but these Marzens in particular. We've had so many in our whole series. We've got a slew of episodes just on Marzens alone, in addition to the other great episodes we have. Leave it to the Germans to make a German beer.
Yeah.